وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Tonight's, I think, is the 13th night? Yes, it's the 13th night. But subhanAllah, the domino effect of Ramadan has begun. It just runs from here. The speed at which Ramadan will be over with is going to be extremely upsetting for many people. It just keeps on running. And the next week we'll be sitting here and we'll be talking about the schedule of tahajjud in the first 10 nights. And once you enter the 10 nights, khalas, it's just a matter of figuring out when Eid is going to be. Subhanallah Rabbil Arshil Azim. And it's important that you continue to push yourself and hold yourself to the standard you've been holding yourself throughout Ramadan, maybe even more. Especially when you feel like it's slipping away and you don't know, has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted us or not? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the acceptance and the forgiveness and the freedom of punishment. So today we start with the beginning of Surat Ibrahim. We go to somewhere in the middle of Surat Al-Nahl, and then we continue after that. Tomorrow we'll continue. So the third cluster of surahs from Ibrahim to Al-Nahl. Ibrahim, Al-Hijr, and Al-Nahl. 3 surahs, and they talk about bounties. They talk about ni'mah, the concept of ni'mah. It's a very important aspect of life. It's not a simple topic that people wonder, well, why does it require a cluster? Oh, for sure it does. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you is a ni'mah, if you see it that way. Now, which is what the surahs do. So the surahs, all three, each of them looks at the concept of bounty or ni'mah from different perspectives. Surat Ibrahim looks at the at ni'mah from the perspective of the importance or the significance of showing shukr, of being grateful for them, regardless of where they are coming from, regardless what to do with them. Just if you have a bounty, the important piece is that you're able to show gratitude for them. Because if you don't show gratitude, you lose them, regardless of anything else. Like even if you were not religious, it's an important piece. You have to be able to show gratitude and use what you have in a positive way before it is basically taken away from you. And you find that at the beginning of the surah, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. And you find it similarly towards the end of the surah, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. And indeed, the human being is oppressive of himself and lacks gratitude. You find it in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where Ibrahim shows gratitude through his words. Ibrahim alayhi salam, it's like towards the end of his life, he makes, he's just making all the ad'iyah, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the different types of dua that he's making, say Ibrahim alayhi salam. And a lot of it, if not all of it, is just filled with a sense of gratitude, despite the difficulties that Ibrahim alayhi salam went through throughout his life. And that's why at the end of the surah, we find those heavy verses that talk about the oppressors and the zalimeen. So Surat Ibrahim looks at bounties from the perspective of the importance of showing shukr, of showing gratitude. Surat Al-Hijr, it looks at bounties from the perspective of the ability to acknowledge them. You can't be grateful to something that you do not acknowledge as a ni'mah. Meaning if you can't see it as a blessing, then how do you show gratitude for it? You have to be able to see it as a blessing. If you're taking it for granted, or if you feel entitled, then you won't be able to identify this as something good. If you can't identify it as something good, then you'll never be thankful for it. And that's what Surat Al-Hijr covers. And I did the tafsir of Surat Al-Hijr after Fajr in Ramadan of 2018, I think, or 19. Probably 18. Probably 2018. So on the weekends, when I do tafsir of a surah on after Fajr on a weekend. So back in 2018, I did Surat Al-Hijr, and I covered it because it's such an important concept, and it's very surprising, or it takes you by surprise when you actually study the surah, understand it. That it's just telling you, are you able to see that this is a blessing? If you can't see it, then you'll never be able to be grateful for it. So the first, so be grateful for everything, and then have the ability to see what you actually have. That's why at the beginning of the surah, رُبَمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ كَانُوا مُسْلِمِينَ. Maybe the disbelievers wish deep down inside that they could be Muslim. Maybe you don't realize that what you have is such a big blessing that other people wish they didn't have obstacles and barriers between them and between being a Muslim, and you don't have those barriers. And then it just goes through all of these different basic existence concepts, like وَلَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا فِي السَّمَاءِ بُرُوجًا وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ وَحَفِظْنَاهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ رَجِيمٍ. It just talks about the existence of the cosmos and the earth and everything on it. These are blessings. If you don't see them as such, then you can't be grateful for them. And we take a lot of things for granted. And because of that, you'll find, I think it's there. Maybe we'll get to talk about it. But it's the only surah in the Quran that has a description of the creation of Adam from salsalin min hama'in masnoon. Salsal, which is hardened clay. Hama'in masnoon is rotten mud, or rotten mud. So he's made, this is what is described as hardened clay with rotten mud on the inside. And Iblis, and he told Allah in this surah very clearly, I'm not prostrating and I'm not showing respect because he's created from this weird mix, and I'm from fire. We're very different. He hasn't done anything yet, so there's no reason for me to respect him based on his merit. He doesn't have merit yet. If it's based on creation, well, I am from pure fire, from min marijin min nar, which is smokeless fire. It was very pure. And he's from salsal min hama'in masnoon. It's hardened clay with rotten mud in the midst of it. Little did Iblis know that this is why Adam alayhi salam was special. His potential came from the duality of his creation, from the ruh and from the soil of the earth coming together and the nafs being born from it all. That's Adam's potential. So Iblis, his biggest problem was he wasn't able to see that was why Adam alayhi salam was special. So he made the mistake. And throughout the surah, the same stories are repeated. People aren't able to see their blessings. Lut is talked about here. Because people stopped seeing the blessing of spouses, of families, of functional families. And they became, in a crazy manner, sex-driven. And they stopped seeing everything was sexualized in their brains, and they stopped seeing the blessing of just having a spouse and having a family, having children. This is a big deal. So that's what Surat Al-Hijr talks about. Your ability to acknowledge blessings. And you have to ask yourself, are there blessings in your life that you take for granted, or you're so entitled you don't see them? You don't even know that they're there. You don't even notice that they're there. Does Allah does He have to take something away before we see it? Or are we able to be grateful and acknowledge a blessing that before it's gone, before it's lost forever, and you can never get it back again? Surat Nahl talks about blessings, but it looks at it from the perspective that they come from Allah. Their source is one. All the different blessings, even though the routes making it way to you, this comes a check through the mail from your work, and this is from a family member, and this is a fulan helped me with that. But their source is one. They all come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus they have to be used based on His rules, based on His laws, according to His will. And if you don't, then the whole system, فَخَرَّ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّقْفُ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ, the whole system collapses. And that's the longest surah of the three. The longest of the three just tells you, look, all of the blessings are from your Lord, from Allah. Do not lose that affinity. Do not lose the attachment of seeing what you have as coming directly from Allah, which will allow you to use them according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. And that's what this cluster of surahs talks about. It just talks about blessings and bounties, ni'mah. Everything you're given in this world is rizq. Until you see it as a ni'mah, it turns into that. Everything is provision. Everything. It becomes a ni'mah if you see it as such. If you don't, then it continues not to be. And everything we have in our lives are ni'am. Everything that we have is a ni'mah. So you have to make sure you're grateful. You have to be able to acknowledge them so you don't lose track of something that may be in the background that you've been entitled to and that you've been taking for granted for a long time. And then you have to always make sure that you see it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those are the three surahs that we're going to be reading tonight. So, not to take any longer than we need to, let's start with the, do we have any? Let me see if there's people who voted on this or not. I'm going to do whatever I want anyways, but... Okay, let's do Ibrahim 12. Ibrahim 12. Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما لنا ألا نتوكل على الله وقد هدانا سبلنا ولنصبرن على ما آذيتمونا وعلى الله فليتوكل المتوكلون.
So in this story at the beginning of Surat Ibrahim, after he talks subhanahu wa ta'ala about Musa alayhi salam, and Musa has a dialogue with his people. After he does that, we have a story of a generic one, where it doesn't really point out exactly who the prophets are or who the people are. It's just a generic, it's almost like this is the story of every group of people. This happens every time, it's the same thing. And they say, and the disbelievers come to their prophets and say, we have doubts, we don't believe that what you have to say is the truth. And the prophets say, أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكٌّ فَاطِرِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And they say, well, you don't have any signs. And the prophets say, well, we can't bring a sign if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us one, but He gives us one, we'll show it to you. And then at the end of what they're saying, what the prophets are saying, they say this ayah here. وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَقَدْ هَدَانَا سُبُلَنَا وَلَنَصْبِرَنَّ عَلَى مَا آذَيْتُمُونَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. They say, why wouldn't we show dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And He is the one who has guided us our ways. In the ways and the paths that we have taken, He has guided us. Surat Ibrahim talks about gratitude for blessings. The response of the prophets in this story, within this surah, show you what that means, what that translates into in terms of behaviors and in terms of perspectives. These prophets are being persecuted by their people, oppressed. They're being called liars. They're not making much progress. And they're being told that if you don't stop doing this, لَنُخْرِجَنَّكُم مِّنْ أَرْضِنَا أَوْ لَتَعُودُنَّ فِي مِلَّتِنَا, we're going to remove you from this land, or you're going to have to change what you're doing. Their response was, وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ. We depend upon Allah, and why wouldn't we? How could we not? How could we not depend upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And He is the one who guided us our ways. Subulana, meaning the ways that we have been given, which are the pathways of Islam, or the pathways of guidance. And this is, to me, a part of the surah that reminds us of the importance of showing gratitude for the blessing of guidance. And I've talked about this month a few times now. And I think it's a theme that is worthy of contemplation. Guidance is a blessing. It's a big deal if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants it to you. If you know where you're going with your life, and you understand, you have clarity upon what you're doing, and what path you're going to take, and what is coming at the end of it all, and why you're doing all what you're doing. These questions most people don't have authentic answers for. They make up their answers as they go along, and they come up with a philosophy of life that is personal to them, that suits them or suits wherever they're living, or what their circumstances or context is. But you have been granted an authentic understanding of everything that happens in the universe and everything that occurs to you. He granted you that blessing of guidance. So Surat Ibrahim is not interested, or doesn't talk a lot about just the wording of gratitude. It comes at the end. That comes at the end with the wording of Ibrahim alayhi salam. But rather about what you do that shows gratitude. When He says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, if you show gratitude, then He will give you more, He'll increase you. Well, how do you show gratitude for guidance? You depend upon Allah. You continue your job. You continue to spread the message. And even if you're threatened, and even if you're losing status and you're losing ground, you continue to depend upon Him. وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نَتَوَكَّلَ. Why wouldn't we depend upon Allah? وَقَدْ هَدَانَا سُبُلَنَا. And He is the one who granted us guidance, and we know where we're going because of Him. This blessing that He gave us, it requires from us to continue to walk this path and show dependence, even though you're threatening us to take away our lives. وَلَنَصْبِرَنَّ عَلَى مَا آذَيْتُمُونَ. And indeed, we will show perseverance towards the persecution and harm that you are projecting towards us. Why are we doing this? Because He guided us. We have to thank this blessing of guidance, and that's how we'll do it. We'll depend upon you, and then we will show grit and perseverance as you harm us. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. And that is the story that should be our story as well. Our story should be the same. As individuals who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the blessing of guidance to, you have to show gratitude towards that. It's not an achievement. It's not an achievement. The fact that you're guided right now, it's not an achievement. It's not an accomplishment. It's a blessing. See it as such. And if you see it as such, then not only will you see no reason not to continue to have tawakkul as life gets difficult, but you will continue to persevere no matter how difficult it becomes. No matter how much harm you receive, you'll continue to walk your path with perseverance, because He granted you this blessing, and you don't want to lose it, because you'll lose it otherwise. All right, let's do ayah number 42. Forgive me. I'm counting the votes instead of 42 of Surat Ibrahim.
ولا تحسبن الله غافلا عما يعمل الظالمون إنما يؤخرهم ليوم تشخص فيه الأبصار.
The end of this surah, we have this ayah that the least we can say about it is it grants a certain degree of peace and calmness when He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ. And do not think for a moment. Tahsabanna here has an emphasis of the noon, right? It's وَلَا تَحْسَب, but here He adds the noon to emphasize, meaning do not for a moment think or assume وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ghafilan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oblivious. Yeah? That He's oblivious to what عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ, what the oppressors are doing. Don't think for a moment that there's someone who's oppressing someone else on this planet, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oblivious to that act of oppression, no matter how small it is. no matter how microscopic the act of oppression is. And some people will say, they was oppressed, and there is no way for anyone to be able to see what happened to me. No matter how I explain it, it's gone. My haqq is lost. It's never lost. It's never lost. If you've been oppressed, even the slightest, to the slightest, meaning even if you try to explain to me your oppression, I wouldn't understand it because it's so detailed and so delicate, and there's no evidence to support it, and whatever happened before, and there's no way to actually go back and verify anything. If you were oppressed, even the slightest amount, do not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oblivious towards what the oppressors did. Then why are they left to oppress? And that's talking about small acts of oppression. There are massive acts of oppression that are ongoing, that continue to occur. People in the hundreds or in the tens of thousands are dying due to nothing but brutal oppression, to persecution. This is very, these types of occurrences in the world cause one of two things. It either causes people to increase in their degree of iman, or it causes them to lose it completely. And I've seen this happen many times in the past, and I'm bringing it to your attention. When people witness a very high amount of brutality, when they see a concerning amount of lack of compassion, and it's just very, and there's a lot of harm and a lot of blood that's ongoing. When people see that, one of two things happen. Either their level of iman increases and skyrockets, and it changes them, and they become people who have causes and and they turn their lives around to be individuals who live for righteousness and speak out against injustice, or they lose their faith altogether. And during what is called today the Arabic Spring, even though I don't know it was a spring, it seemed more of a, well, if it was a spring, it was like this spring, the spring that we have right now. It wasn't a very nice spring, that was for sure. So what they called that spring, I saw so many people, like I saw a change, I saw a shift in the level of tadayyun, of iman that happened in the Middle East. And it was not a good one. And it was not a good one. Before what occurred, things were doing better. But because the amount of blood that was spilled by our own selves, by people of the same land, in Egypt and in Syria and in Libya and in Yemen, there was so much blood spill that continued for such a long time with almost just the amount of brutality that people saw, because they were not prepared, because they don't understand that this is a part of the very difficult labor that this ummah is going through in order for it to turn things around again, in order for it to stand up again after 350 years of just complete lack of function. It's going to be difficult. This path, unfortunately, has a lot of blood on it. But people don't understand that. They end up losing their faith because it was so brutal. But this ayah here is designed to remind you that وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا. Allah is not oblivious. عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ, what the oppressors are doing. إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُم لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ مُهْطِعِينَ مُقْنِعِي رُؤُوسِهِمْ لَا يَرْتَدُّ إِلَيْهِمْ طَرْفُهُم وَأَفْئِدَتُهُم هَوَاءٌ. He talks about them, saying all that's happening here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just postponing them. He's just postponing them to a day where eyes will bulge out of faces, where they will walk crooked with their heads held down. They're looking, but they can't really process what they're seeing. What they are seeing is not being processed by their brain because they're so dazed. They're in a state of shock where they can't even understand what they're seeing. And their consciousnesses, their afida, is hawa, is just all over the place. You speak to them, they can't respond. They look at you, but they don't understand what they're saying. You've seen someone like that, right? For sure. Anyone coming out of anesthesia after a long surgery, that's what they look at you and they have no idea what they're seeing. They have no recollection of what was being said afterwards. That's what happens. Yawm al-Qiyamah, that's how they walk. They walk around in a state of humility, in a state of fear. And they're just, that's what he talks about. You're scared that there's an oppressor somewhere that is going unnoticed? No. They're just being postponed to a moment where they'll come, and the fear that they'll be in will be more than what they ever inflicted upon people during this dunya. So have any complete thiqah in that, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice. Let's do Al-Hijr 14.
ولو فتحنا عليهم بابا من السماء فظلوا فيه يعرجون
Yeah. Is this working? Is it good? Okay. The first time I explained this ayah, I was 16 years old. It was one of the first times I was ever I ever stood up in front of people outside of children and said something. It was recorded on this old VHS thing. I saw it exists somewhere. It's hilarious because the quality of the explanation is so bad that it's just laughable. But I tried to explain, and I did a very bad job in trying to explain what this ayah meant. It's one of the earliest things attempts of me trying to do a little bit of reflection. Surat Al-Hijr, as I pointed out, its interest when it comes to blessing is your ability to acknowledge it. Are you able to see a blessing? Or some people can't. Some people only see the empty half of the cup. That's how they are. They just can't see. They just don't see it. Now, you're not supposed to be someone who's delusional and only sees the full half. You have to see the full cup, what's missing and what's there. But you cannot, what's there cannot go unnoticed. It cannot go unacknowledged, that's for sure. As a Muslim, we're neither pessimists or optimists. We have to be something in the middle. We have to be realists, where we see what exists in the cup, what's missing, so we can work towards it, but we're able to acknowledge what's there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a group of people who don't have that ability. And this is the example He gives. وَلَوْ فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَابًا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. There are some people that if you were to open the doors of the cosmos for them, فَظَلُّوا فِيهِ يَعْرُجُونَ, and they went in a mi'raj. A mi'raj means it's not straight line. Al-arj, when someone's a'raj, is someone who has a disability and they don't walk straight, they walk with a limp. So al-arj is when it's not a straight line, it's a curved line. فَظَلُّوا فِيهِ يَعْرُجُونَ. They go up into the cosmos in a curved manner, which is exactly how you can't leave the earth in a straight line. It has to be, and that's obviously a nugget for people who learn and go into science and then hear the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that there's something there, always been there. Just a little nugget for you to kind of keep your mind going. فَظَلُّوا فِيهِ يَعْرُجُونَ. Had He done that for them, He opened the cosmos and put them on a Superman-like ride, where they're just going to soar into space to see the universe. لَقَالُوا إِنَّمَا سُكِّرَتْ أَبْصَارُنَا بَلْ نَحْنُ قَوْمٌ مَسْحُورُونَ. They'll say, no, this is just, our eyes are shut. Oh, and someone has played a spell on us. Someone is doing sihr upon us. This is not real. This is not actually real. لَقَالُوا إِنَّمَا سُكِّرَتْ أَبْصَارُنَا. They say, no, this is someone has sealed our eyes shut. It's too dark out here. It's too dark. Well, it's true, in the universe outside, in the space, it can be dark, but you can see, all they could see is that it's dark, and they say, بَلْ نَحْنُ قَوْمٌ مَسْحُورُونَ. Someone has cast a spell on us. There's nothing you can do to satisfy them. Nothing will be enough. They'll never be happy, no matter what you show them. Even if you were to open the cosmos and have them soar into space to see it all, they'll say, لَقَالُوا إِنَّمَا سُكِّرَتْ أَبْصَارُنَا بَلْ نَحْنُ قَوْمٌ مَسْحُورُونَ. That's what they're going to see. They just don't have the ability to actually acknowledge blessings. Be careful of being someone like that. Whatever Allah gives you is never enough. Could have been better. Yes, for sure. Also could have been worse, like way worse. Yes, there's an infinite amount of possibility of something being better, but there's an equally infinite amount of possibilities of things being worse. So with all these possibilities that are not something that is calculable or tangible for the human being, I can't keep track of all of this. Whatever you're given, just make sure that you acknowledge it. If it's good, acknowledge the good that's in it. Do not lose track of that, because if you do, the end is never good. The end is never positive for someone who lacks the ability to see what they actually have, because at some point it'll be taken away, and then you'll wish that you acknowledged it when it was there. How many people have you met who spend years upon years regretting not having better relationships with parents or siblings or relatives or friends because they didn't realize what a blessing that person was to them in their lives. They didn't acknowledge it. They took that person for granted time and time again. They never felt it was it wasn't important. And then that was taken away. And now the fact you eat, you have an appetite. I work with people who don't have appetites. They just want to eat. They just want to have one meal where they're not nauseous, where they don't feel like they're force feeding themselves. You eat, alhamdulillah, you have an appetite, the food goes down, it sits there, it's digested, it comes out the other side, it's fine. Simple stuff, the ability to see these things and just acknowledge that they're there. Because if you don't do that, you can't be grateful. You can't be grateful. And the more you do that, the more grateful you are on a subconscious level. And that changes the type of person you are. It turns you into a much nicer person and someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love more. All right, let's do Hijr 56. They're all the same today. The votings are all the same. 56.
قال ومن يقنط من رحمة ربه إلا الضالون.
I love this story. Ibrahim alayhi salam's story in the Quran is told in in small patches all throughout the Mus'haf, right? This part of the story is only here. His reaction, alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was told that he was going to have a child after the age of 90. Ibrahim alayhi salam had Ismail alayhi salam, and he was very happy with him. He loved Ismail very much, and he put him through the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to live بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم. And he would go back and he would build the Kaaba with Ismail. Ismail would be responsible for the Kaaba and all of Ismail's descendants till today. Well, maybe not today exactly, but all throughout history were the people who were responsible for Sidanat al-Kaaba, والرفادة والسقاية. They were responsible for taking care of this bait and the people who come to it. And he lived, alayhi salam, somewhere in Palestine. Most people say it's in Al-Khalil. Some people say he was in Urushalim, in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, in Al-Maqdis, in Bayt al-Maqdis, Al-Aqsa. So he lived there, alayhi salam, and he was getting old, very old. And his wife Sarah was also very old, and she's aqim. She's never had children before. And that was established. That's why he married Hajar and he had Ismail. He didn't have a child. And on their way, the Malaika, on their way to punish the people of Sadum, the people of Lut, alayhi salam, the people Lut was sent to, on their way they would stop and they would tell him, Nubashiruka bighulam. We're going to, we're offering you the good news of a son. So his answer was, Abashartumuni ala ammassani al-kibar. فَبِمَ تُبَشِّرُونَ. You're telling me, you give me good news of a son, and I'm 1 foot in the grave? What good news is this? How am I going to take care of a son? How is she going to have a son? This is how. So there, for a moment there, it happens to the best of us. It happens to the best of us. For a moment there, he lost sight of the blessing that was coming his way. Just for a second, he just lost sight. What? I'm 90. She's 80. How are we going to have a kid? I won't live. How am I going to take care of this kid? قالوا. So their answer was, قالوا بشرناك بالحق فلا تكن من القانطين. We gave you the good news of something that is righteous, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't be someone who has no hope. And so immediately Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was taken back. And this is the trait of a good Muslim. A Muslim, even if for a moment he lacks the ability to see the blessing or the good within a situation, quickly they'll come back and say, no, alhamdulillah, this is good. So his answer was, وَمَنْ يَقْنَطُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّهِ إِلَّا الضَّالُّونَ. And who dares lose his hope in the mercy of their Lord except those who are misguided and deviant? No one does. And he was taken, and he was thankful. And from that son was a prophet, and his son was a prophet, whose son was a prophet. And from them came Musa and Harun and Dawood and Sulaiman and Isa ibn Maryam. So for that moment, where Ibrahim alayhi salam was like, what good news is this? I'm 90. Not seeing it as a blessing for a second. And then being told, that's not how you should respond. He immediately took it back. That's why in Ibrahim la halimun awahun munib. Munib, he quickly goes back. He quickly notices when he says something wrong, and he repents immediately on the spot. He's not too proud. He doesn't bother him at all. He said, وَمَنْ يَقْنَطُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّهِ إِلَّا الضَّالُّونَ. Who dares lose his hope and seeing the good in what Allah offers except someone who is deviant? No, I'm not like that. And subhanAllah, this thing that he thought was not going to be a blessing, from it came 22 prophets. That's the number that we have in the Quran. From this child would be a prophet, and from him, most of the prophets of Bani Israel would come from him. Imagine if he didn't happen. All the prophets wouldn't be just Yaqub, the story of Yusuf and Dawood and Sulaiman and Musa and Isa and Yahya and Zakaria. All these stories wouldn't exist to begin with. But for a moment there, he just didn't notice it. And sometimes that happens where you're given something and you don't see the good in it immediately. And what do you know? What do you know? What do you know where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. You don't know who's going to be more beneficial to you. You don't know what's going to be actually good for you in the long run. You don't know. Just have the ability to see something as khayr when it comes to you, because it is. All right. Let's do Nahl 8.
والخيل والبغال والحمير لتركبوها وزينة ويخلق ما لا تعلمون.
Surat Al-Nahl is just counting blessings. That's all it is. Surat Al-Nahl really, with a little bit of commentary in between. A little bit of commentary in between and a few examples and reminders. Aside from that, it's just Wallahu يعني جعل لكم والله خلق لكم والله أنزل. That's all it is. Just telling you stuff. Wallahu faddala wallah. Just one blessing counted after the other. The beginning of the surah, that's all it is. Just counting blessings. Here's what I did. خلق السماوات والأرض وخلق الإنسان من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم والأنعام خلقها لكم فيه. Just here's what I created. All of it is helpful for you. In this ayah specifically, there's a piece that's just really nice. قال والخيل والبغال والحمير, and horses and mules and donkeys. لتركبوها, so that you may use it as transportation. وزينة. وزينة. They're pretty. They're beautiful. They're beautiful animals to stare at and to look at. They are. I know that Arabs like to use the word donkey for other usages altogether, but it's not fair. Honestly, it isn't, because it's not a fair. If you grew up in a village and you dealt with a mule or a donkey, they're extremely beautiful animals, and they're very kind. And you will develop an affinity towards these animals if you had one. Like if you own one of them, they're very nice to have, and they're very intelligent, they're very kind, and they show a lot of compassion. SubhanAllah. Wazina, they're beautiful to watch. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in this ayah, and before that as well, وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا جَمَالٌ حِينَ تُرِيحُونَ وَحِينَ تَسْرَحُونَ وَتَحْمِلُ أَثْقَالَكُمْ, is taking the moment for us to say, yeah, I created it for you, and you ride it, and you drink its milk, and you eat its meat, and you use its skins, and all this stuff is, that's why it's there for. It's there for all this. But also there's a piece of it, wazina, that they're beautiful. There's an artistic aspect to this existence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is acknowledging and asking you to acknowledge as well. There's a lot of beauty around you. There's a lot of beauty. You see the beauty? I do this, I think I've shared this before. I'm pretty sure I've shared it a couple of times before. I don't like scrolling much on social media, but when I do, I look up videos of people who are given who are colorblind and being given the glasses for the first time. I love to scroll. I love to watch that. I love it. It's my favorite thing. My favorite thing in the world is to watch someone who's been colorblind all their lives, and someone buy them one of those really expensive glasses where they can see color, because once they put those glasses on, the look on their face is priceless, and the look they have towards everyone else is priceless. It's like, you see this? You've been seeing this the whole time? And you're upset? What are you upset about? Look at the beauty. You just find a 60-year-old or 65-year-old gentleman who's probably never cried in his life stand there with tears running down his face as he just stares at the sky. That's it, just staring at the sky, not even looking at a tulip or a nice painting. No, just staring at the sky, the blueness of the sky, the beauty of it. And we don't see it. This is from Allah. Surat Al-Nahl is saying this is from Allah. Surat Al-Hijr tells you acknowledge it. Acknowledge the beauty of the blessing. And then Surat Al-Nahl tells you make sure you see it coming directly from Allah. وَالْخَيْلَ وَالْبِغَالَ وَالْحَمِيرَ. All these animals that you enjoy and you benefit from, and they allowed us to become what we are today. وَزِينَ لِتَرْكَبُوهَا بَسْ وَزِينَ. They're beautiful. Look at them. وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And He creates that which you do not know about. Meaning there's more beauty that you haven't even found out about. You have not accessed yet. And we know that today. The beauty that exists within the universe that we're a part of, the beauty in His creation, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is breathtaking. It's overwhelming. We have not even scratched the surface. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the beauty of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us. And it's just something, I find it difficult for, I talk about this a lot. I don't think we've done anything about it, and I don't know how to do it because I just don't have that aspect to me. But the artistic sense of the Quran is very real. It's very heavy. The Quran can't be recited as you would read a novel or a newspaper. You have to sing it out. Like you have to have a nice voice. That's artistic. Like you have to have, yeah, there has to be a nice rhythm to it, or else you don't enjoy. It has to be read like that. It's not optional. Like I can't have someone stand up here and recite just with nothing. No, you have to build a tune. And those who don't have tunes, you have to sit with them and teach them to build a tune, because it has to be artistic and beautiful. The Quran is very meticulous about that. It talks about beauty, and it talks about art, and it talks about your ability. If you don't have the ability to embrace that, to absorb beauty and absorb art, then I don't think you'll have the ability to actually fully appreciate what the Quran is and what the teachings of Allah are. They're beautiful. Aside from them being logical and beneficial. Yes, I have to talk about that piece for you and make sure that you have it clear, that it makes sense, and it's beneficial and it's accurate. But aside from all that, it's beautiful. Ya akhi, it's beautiful. There's beauty in it. There's a symphony that's being sung in the background that you just have to listen to. There's harmony to all of it. That piece is going unnoticed, and it's very, and it's, in my opinion, one of the reasons that the youth don't connect with the deen, because they don't see, they're lacking that lens. They don't see the beauty of it all. And we just have to figure out a way to help them see that, because it's extremely, extremely beautiful. And there's that profoundness to it that is just breathtaking, that's worthy of contemplation. Let's do ayah number 66 of Al-Nahl. People are still voting, but it's too late, wallahi. You have to do this throughout the day. Don't do it. 66 of Nahl.
وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة نسقيكم مما في بطونه من بين فرث ودم لبنا خالصا سائغا للشاربين.
As he continues, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to count blessings, this very interesting verse exists. قال وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة. And indeed, you are granted, you have within an'am, within livestock, a ibra, meaning a point to reflect upon, something to notice and to reflect upon and think about. نسقيكم مما في بطونه من بين فرث ودم. We grant you to drink, coming from its bellies, between blood and feces. Farth is that which comes out of the backside of an animal, and dam is blood. So he's saying, from their bellies, between a mix of feces and blood, if you think about it, that's what every creature is made of. So between feces and blood, we grant you labanan khalisa, pure milk. Laban that is khalis, that's pure. It's not blood and it's not feces, but it's running between them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed it so it purifies from blood and from feces. You get this white, pure laban to drink. Khalisa. It's pure, it's khalis. Sa'ighal lisharibin, beautified and easy for the person who wants to drink it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing that for you, then we are obligated to do the same for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. As within these livestock, within these animals, within these cows and sheep and camels and goats, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us this pure drink, this full meal of a drink, milk, extracted from just ongoing blood and feces, and He makes sure it's pure for you to enjoy. Make sure that what you offer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also purified from all of the garbage that is surrounding it on the inside. Forgive me for the lack of a better word. From all of the vanity and the ostentation and the need for recognition and from between all the envy and the arrogance, between all of it, get rid of it and offer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something that is as pure as the laban that He offered you from these livestock. That's why He said, Inna lakum fil an'ami la'ibra. There is something to learn from the an'am. Learn. It's a blessing, but learn something from them. That khalis piece, that purified piece, try to do the same. Try to emulate that and make sure that what you're offering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not, because if He offered you milk that was filled with feces and blood, you're not going to drink it. Why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to accept a deed that is mixed with something that with filth around it that it shouldn't be? I hope that was a benefit. Subhanakallah bihamdik, shalla la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair.